Welcome to the Goldenberg Destiny Project. Today we're going to speak about Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, our teacher, the giver of the Torah. So Moshe was born in Egypt during a period when there was when the Egyptians were killing all Jewish male babies, and he was put into a basket, set adrift in the river, and the daughter of Paro found him. She knew he was Jewish. She took him in to the palace, she protected him, and brought him up. He did not have a lot of contact with the other Jewish people, but he did love the Jewish people very much. And when one time he saw an Egyptian was beating up a Jewish man, and he killed the Egyptian, and when it was discovered, he had to flee. He was 20 years old, he fled. He returned to Egypt as a messenger of God 60 years later. He went to Paro, he performed all the miracles, he took the Jewish people out of Egypt, he took them to Mount Sinai, he gave them the Torah, and then he led them through the Midbar, the wilderness, for 40 years, until they came to the threshold of Eretz Yisrael, and then he passed away. At the end of the Torah has an epitaph of Moshe, sums up his life. And the Torah says, V'loikom novi oid b'Yisrael k'Moshe asher yodoi Hashem panim al panim. There was never another prophet like Moshe that Hashem spoke to him face to face. Which means that Moshe was the greatest person that ever lived, because the measure of a person of greatness is not how strong he is or how smart he is. The measure of the greatness of a person is how close he is to God. And Moshe was the closest ever to God. Hashem spoke to him face to face. Now, in Bamidbar, there's another story which explains this more. When God started to speak with Moshe and to send him prophecies regularly, then he separated from his wife, meaning that he didn't move out. He still talked to her. I'm sure they had breakfast together and dinner, but they stopped having marital relations. And Miriam once said to Aharon, she says, why does he think that he is better than us, that he has to stop having marital relations just because he's a prophet? We're also prophets. And Moshe heard this, and the Torah says that he did not take offense, because Moshe was the humblest person that ever lived. He was Veish Moshe onav me'oid mikol adam asher al pnei adama. He was more humble than any other person on the face of the earth. And God was not happy with this, so he called them to the Oyel Moed, and he said to them, listen, Shimona, Dvarai, listen to what I'm going to say. Okay, I'm just going to translate it, I'm not going to read it. He said that if you have prophets, that I speak to them through visions or dreams, through puzzles, showed symbols, that's one type of prophecy. That's all prophets receive their prophecy in that way. Moshe receives his prophecy, Pe'el Pe'ah Daber Boy, I speak to him, mouth to mouth, face to face, directly. I speak to him directly, no puzzles, no symbols. I speak everything, I say to him directly. So this establishes the difference between the prophecy of Moshe and the prophecy of other prophets. Moshe is called Aspaklaria HaMe'ira. He got his prophecy through a clear lens. Other prophets got their prophecies through Aspaklaria She'ena Me'ira, a translucent lens, where it wasn't clear, but they were able to figure it out. Now, they got it through symbols and puzzles, and they had to figure it out. But then they delivered the prophecy in their own words. They wrote their prophecies based on what they were able to discern from all the symbols that they were shown. And it was positive. It wasn't like they were taking a guess, maybe they're right or maybe they're wrong. The Rambam says that the Nevi'im knew for sure that their prophecy was true, that this was really a prophecy from God. He says Avram, when he got a prophecy to take Yitzchak to the Akedah, and he didn't tell it to him explicitly, he got it in the same way other Nevi'im got their prophecies. But if it was not 100%, how could he go take Yitzchak to Akedah? So Rambam says it was 100%. It's similar to, like if you have a chess puzzle. So you sit down, you figure it out, like, how do you give mate, this and that, you figure it out. But once you figure it out, that's the answer. So there's no question about the answer once you figure it out. It was the same with the puzzles that the Nevi'im were given. Once they figured it out, it was absolutely clear, it was sure. This is definitely what it means, and then they were able to deliver the prophecies to the people. But Moshe was called Shchina Medaberes B'Torach Groinoi. God is speaking from his throat. Doesn't mean that. It means that the words that he spoke were exactly the words that God told him to speak. That means that he got his prophecy directly. He spoke them, he told them words, and he heard those words, and those words he conveyed. He didn't have to go through a process of figuring it out. This was his. Now, so here we see that his level of prophecy was beyond, it was the highest level possible. At the same time, the Pasuk tells us that Moshe was more humble than any other person on the face of the earth. So is this a paradox? I mean, here, Moshe had the greatest prophecy. He was the greatest person that ever lived in the history of the world. At the same time, he was the most humble. So it's paradoxical, or maybe it isn't. Maybe there's some kind of relationship between the two. So this is what I would like to speak about. The Rambam says that Nevi'im only get their prophecy from angels. As this we just saw, God doesn't speak to them directly. Even the symbols that they get, or whatever indications that they get, all come through an angel. So why does it have to come through an angel? And why does it have to be in puzzles? Why can't they be told directly? Let the angel tell to them directly. Okay, God's not going to speak to them directly, only Moshe. But why does it have to be through these type of enigmatic messages? Eventually they figure them out, but in the beginning, what does this mean? What does that mean? So I think the reason is, the purpose of all these things is to emphasize to the Navi, to the prophet, how distant he is from God. He is not close to God. You're talking to God, so you think you're close to him? You're very, very distant. He doesn't speak to you directly. He doesn't give you clear messages. You have to figure it out. All of this is to create distance. Now, why is this necessary? Because if a person has ego, if a person has a sense of self, then that sense of self, that makes him far from God. If you think that there is somebody that counts in the world besides God, that you yourself are also somebody that counts, then that pushes you away from God. It makes you distant. So in order to show you that you are not close to God, that you think that you are, but you're not close to God, that you are very distant, that's why these things have to be done. Moshe, because he was an Anav, he was the greatest Anav, more humble than any person on the face of the earth. All the Nevi'im weren't arrogant, they were humble people. But even Avram, the Gemara makes a difference. Avram said, V'anochi afer v'efer, I am dust and ashes. That means, and Moshe said, Nachnu ma, what am I? I'm nothing. So nothing means I'm not even dust and ashes. If you have a sliver of ego, which even says that you are dust, but dust is also something very, very small, very tiny, very minuscule, but it's something. If you have an ego that's even slightly there, then you need to be impressed. No, there is only God. God is very distant, and that's why you have to get your prophecies through these ways. Moshe was able to get that prophecy of Aspaklarium era because he had no ego. Only he was nothing. Nachnu ma. He did not consider, he knew, of course, he didn't think that he was a simple person. He knew that he was strong and brilliant, and that he was a huge prophet. He knew this, but he didn't take anything for himself. He didn't have a feeling of ego. Everything that he was, it was all subsumed in God. He didn't think anything, he didn't have any sense of himself separate from God. No sense of self separate from God. That was his humility. And because he felt like that, therefore it was not necessary to create any barriers for him to break through. Therefore, God could speak to him directly. Now, how did he come to this point? He was, when he was born, he was just a person. He was a child of destiny, but he had choices. It wasn't necessarily that he would end up being this great Moshe. Maybe not. He could have made other choices. So you see that when he came to prophecy, that he didn't come directly to this prophecy of God speaking to him face to face. You see by the sneh, by the burning bush, when the Torah says very specifically, Malach Hashem spoke to him from the burning bush. God did not speak to him directly. An angel spoke to him. So even when he got his first prophecy, he needed to speak, he needed to have it delivered to him through an angel, not directly. So there was a growth process. In the beginning, when he became a prophet, or received his first prophecy, he received it like a normal prophet. But then he grew and he grew and he grew until he came, and it was very important that he should reach the level of prophecy of Aspaklarium Me'ira, that God is speaking from his throat, because he was going to give the Torah to the Jewish people. The Torah had to be given in God's words. You're not going to give him symbols and puzzles, and then he'll figure out what the Torah is, and he'll write the Torah in his own words. That wouldn't work. The Torah had to be God's words. So he had to be capable that God would directly tell him the words, and he would convey them to the people. So he had a long distance to go. So how did he go from receiving his first prophecy through an angel until he came to the point where he was capable? Maybe in Egypt it would have been okay to be a regular prophet and deliver the miracles and the plagues. Maybe that would have been okay. But at the end, when he had to go up to Sinai and receive the Torah, give it to the people, there had to be that level of prophecy. And it was the only time ever. So how did he get there? So I think we can trace it at the sneh. When God told him that he should go to Egypt and tell them Poket Pekadati and lead the people out of Egypt. What did he say? 7 days. He didn't say, you're sending me to Egypt, I should take them out? I'm on it. I'm going. No. He objected. He said, they won't listen to me. Then next day, 7 days, he kept raising objections. Now it's really kind of interesting that for 7 days, God is telling you, go. And for 7 days, you can say, no, but this is not going to work, that's going to work. God is telling you to go. Why he's telling you to go, and it's going to work. So why are you constantly raising objections? Why it's not going to work, why it's not going to work, why it's not going to work. But the answer is, which you can see from Baal Turim, first Baal Turim in Parsha Shmini, the answer is that that's what was expected of him. When God sends you to go take the people out of Mitzrayim, he expects you to say, no, I'm not worthy. He expects you to say that. Every time Don't say, sure, yeah, you picked a good man. I'm on it. No, you can't do that. You have to say, I'm not worthy. And every time you say I'm not worthy, you become more worthy. Because every time you say not worthy, you're diminishing your ego. You're pushing down your ego. No, I'm not worthy. So your ego becomes smaller. The next day, I'm still not worthy, becomes even smaller. 7 days he suppressed his ego and pushed it down. But the final step in the elimination of his ego was when he accepted the mission already, and he went to take his leave from his father-in-law, from Yisrael, and God told him, "Belech l'chalosh of Mitzrayim, when you go down to Egypt, you should do what I tell you." And Rashi says like this, a very, very important Rashi. And I think this is the key to everything. He said, Da shal manas kein telech. I want you to know that you go on this condition. This is what I want you to do. Shetei giber b'shleichusi. You should be perform my mission heroically. Last is called moivsad of neifaroi, to perform all my wonders in front of Paroi. V'loi sira mimenu. Do not be afraid of him. If you have any fear of him, then your mission is corrupted. You may not be afraid of him. And when Moshe knew that he had to not be afraid of him, that means that he could not have any drop of ego, because to have totally no fear means you have no ego. If you have an ego and you think of yourself, then there's always a drop of fear, because what's going to happen to me? Even if me is only dust, even if me is only ashes, but I'm afraid what's going to happen to my ashes. If me as ashes, it'll be destroyed. In order to have no fear, you have to reduce yourself to the point where Nachnu mo, I am nothing. And when he reached that point, and he went to Mitzrayim, he went to Egypt, take them out, he had already come to a point where he was no ego, and from that point on, he was able to get his prophecies, as Paklaria Meira, that God would speak directly to him. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again. I'd like to invite you to visit me at RabbiReinman.com and explore all my works, both completed and still in progress, and kindly take the opportunity to lend your support on the participant page. Thank you very much, and be well.